Welcome, and thank you for joining Late Night Science. Tonight, as you let the noise of the day soften into the background, we're going to drift into a quiet exploration of the most mysterious companion we all share, the present moment. No matter how far we wander into memories of the past or dreams of the future, we always return to this fragile sliver of time called now. It is fleeting, yet it is the only place we ever truly live. Before we begin, I would love to know where you're listening from. Are you somewhere winding down after a long day, or perhaps wide awake in the still hours of the night, curious about the mysteries of time? Share your corner of the world in the comments. It's always fascinating to see how far this little journey reaches. And if you find these explorations calming, a gentle way to end your day, please consider giving this video a like and subscribing to Late Night Science. To those of you already here, thank you. You are the reason these quiet reflections keep flowing forward, moment by moment. I only hope that what follows doesn't keep you too awake with wonder. But if it does, may it be some comfort to know that while sleep waits just beyond, time itself is whispering its deepest secrets as you listen. And so we begin, not with the distant galaxies or the hidden particles of the quantum world, but with something closer, something unavoidable. We begin with the prison of now. Imagine for a moment that all of time, every second that has ever existed, and every second that ever will, stretches out like an infinite library. In that library are the shelves of history, holding every empire, every memory, every personal story you have lived. And further down, in dimly lit rows, are futures that have not yet been read, waiting to unfold. But here is the paradox. You, me, every one of us. We are confined to reading only a single page, the one directly in front of us. The past can be remembered, but not relived. The future can be imagined, but not yet touched. We are locked into a single, vanishing sliver. The present. This sliver feels so thin, doesn't it? By the time we name it, it has already slipped into memory. Say the word now, and the instant you pronounce it, the now you intended has already passed. Some philosophers have gone so far as to suggest that the present moment is an illusion altogether, a construction of the mind attempting to stitch together continuity in a universe where time simply is. Yet, illusion or not, it is the stage on which all of life unfolds. Every laugh, every tear, every discovery, every love, all of it occurs in this elusive fraction of reality we call now. Think about your own life. When you recall your happiest moments, you're not truly re-experiencing them. You are standing in the present, holding a memory. When you anxiously anticipate something ahead, you are still here, in the present, conjuring futures that have not yet arrived. You have never actually lived in the past. You have never lived in the future. You have only ever lived in the present. And yet, this truth feels unsatisfying. We long to reach back to what has been lost, or reach forward to what has not yet been born. We tell ourselves stories of when I was and when I will be, forgetting that in truth there is only when I am. It is a paradox that has haunted thinkers for centuries. St. Augustine once wrote in his Confessions, "What then is time? If no one asks me, I know. If I wish to explain it to one that asketh, I know not." He described the present as having no duration, neither stretching into the past nor extending into the future. How then can something so thin, so insubstantial, be the very ground of our existence? And yet, here we are, unable to escape it. Science, too, wrestles with the prison of now. In physics, time is not privileged the way we experience it. According to Einstein's theory of relativity, time is woven into space itself, forming the fabric of space-time. In that view, past, present, and future all exist together, like different rooms in a vast mansion. Our sense of flowing from one room to another is perhaps nothing more than a trick of perspective. If this is true, then the present moment is not the razor's edge we believe it to be, but merely the point from which we gaze upon the mansion of time. And yet, our biology, our minds, our consciousness, they insist on flow. They insist on a now. Here lies the tension. Physics suggests a block of time, while human experience insists on motion. One says we are pages within a finished book, the other that the story is being written as we live it. Which is true? Or might the truth be something stranger still? Could it be that the present, the very thing that feels most immediate and real, is also the most deceptive? Let us not forget how deeply personal this prison is. You, right now, are listening in a present moment that belongs to you alone. I too am speaking from a present moment that was mine when these words were recorded. By the time you hear them, my now has already become your past. And yet, for you, they are alive again in your present. This alone reveals the strangeness of now. It is both universal and utterly private, shared yet never identical. Each person's now is bounded by their perception, by the rhythm of their heartbeat, by the firing of neurons in their brain. Time is communal in theory, but the present is always yours. This is what I mean when I call it a prison. We cannot step outside of it. No technology, no thought experiment, no memory trick can move us beyond the immediacy of now. And yet, rather than despair, this prison also offers a kind of liberation. For if all of life can only be lived here, then here must be enough. Here must be everything. Still, we are restless creatures. We imagine the vastness of cosmic history, the billions of years before us, the billions that may yet come. We wonder what it was like when the first star ignited, or what it will be like when the last one fades into darkness. We project ourselves across time, yearning for more than this narrow window. But in doing so, we overlook the miracle of having a window at all. Imagine a being that existed only outside of time, that could never experience a now. Such a being might see all moments at once, but it would never know what it feels like to live one. Perhaps what seems to us a prison is, from another perspective, the very gift that makes life possible. The present is fleeting, but it is also eternal. It is fleeting because the seconds slip past us faster than we can name them. Yet it is eternal, because no matter how many slip away, there is always another present waiting. This continuity of nows forms the thread of our lives, giving us the illusion of flow, and perhaps also the reality of it. We can debate the ontology of time forever, but the phenomenology, the lived experience, is undeniable. You are here now. And no matter when you ask yourself the question, the answer will always be the same. You are here now. Think of how strange that is. At every point in your life, from childhood to old age, the statement, "I am living in the present," has been true. It was true when you were 5 years old. It was true when you were 15. It will be true when you are 90. The scenery changes. The memories accumulate. The future dwindles. But the truth remains unchanged. You are always in the present. It is the only stable fact of human existence. And yet, that stability is also a mystery. Why should consciousness be anchored in now rather than spread across time? Why should we not live simultaneously in past, present, and future? Some philosophers argue that consciousness itself is the engine of now, that without minds like ours, time would exist, but no present would be privileged. Others argue the opposite, that the present is fundamental and consciousness merely arises within it. Whichever view you take, the prison of now remains unbroken. Here is where the paradox deepens. To call it a prison is to assume it traps us. But could it be that it also protects us? Imagine if you could truly experience all of your past at once, the heartbreaks, the grief, the pain. Or if you could truly feel all of your future at once, the anxieties, the losses, the inevitable decline. Perhaps we are spared by the prison, allowed to face only what we can handle, a single moment at a time. Like a lamp illuminating just a few steps ahead, the present shields us from being overwhelmed by the enormity of time's expanse. And yet, even knowing this, we resist. We are haunted by nostalgia, seduced by anticipation. We are forever glancing backward and forward, rarely content with the here and now. Perhaps this is what makes humans unique. Not just our awareness of time, but our dissatisfaction with its boundaries. A cat or a tree may live fully in the present, but humans wrestle with it, question it, dream of escape. In this struggle lies both our genius and our suffering. So, tonight, as you listen, consider this paradox anew. The present is a razor's edge, always vanishing, never lasting, and yet it is the only home you have ever known. The past is memory, the future imagination, but the present is life itself. To call it a prison is only half the truth. It is also the kingdom in which all your joys, all your loves, all your discoveries reside. You cannot leave it, but why would you wish to? As we continue, we will look at how science frames this puzzle, how physics, neuroscience, and philosophy each wrestle with the enigma of now. For if the present is our only home, then understanding it may be the deepest understanding we can hope for. And so, from this gentle reflection, we turn toward the foundations of time itself, the arrow that gives it direction, the illusion that gives it flow, and the mystery that makes it so impossible to escape. Time, as we experience it, feels like a river. It flows forward, carrying us from birth to death, from one event to another, always forward, never back. We mark its passage in heartbeats, in sunsets, in clocks ticking against the silence of our days. But physics tells a stranger story. According to the equations that describe the universe at its most fundamental level, time does not flow at all. It simply is. The sense of movement, the arrow pointing from yesterday to today to tomorrow, is not written into the mathematics of the cosmos. It is something we impose upon it. This revelation unsettles us. How can the flow of time, the one thing more obvious than the ground beneath our feet, be an illusion? To answer that, we must explore the physics of time itself, and in particular, two of its most mysterious features: the arrow of time and the possibility that the arrow is only a shadow of something deeper. Let us begin with entropy. Entropy is a word that sounds abstract, but it rules your life in every moment. It is the measure of disorder, the tendency of things to move from order to chaos, from structure to dissolution. An egg breaks but never spontaneously reassembles. A cup of hot tea cools to match the room but never reheats itself. A human body ages, cells wear down, and no process reverses the march. Entropy increases, always. This is the arrow of time, the one-way street we all walk. And yet, here is the paradox. The fundamental laws of physics, Newton's equations, Maxwell's equations, the Schrödinger equation, are time-symmetric. They do not care whether time moves forward or backward. If you filmed the orbit of a planet around the sun and then reversed the footage, the math would work just as well, in reverse. Nothing in the laws themselves dictates a preferred direction. So why then do we live in a world where time has such a clear arrow? Why does entropy increase? One answer is that it began that way. The universe, at its birth in the Big Bang, started in a state of remarkably low entropy, astonishingly ordered. Like a ball perched at the top of a hill, the cosmos has been rolling, downhill ever since, spreading out, dispersing, moving toward chaos. In this view, the arrow of time is nothing fundamental, but merely the echo of improbable beginnings. It is the consequence of a universe that started in an unlikely state of harmony and has been unraveling ever since. But that only deepens the mystery. Why was the universe born in such low entropy in the first place? Why did everything begin in a state of astonishing order? No one has a final answer. Some say it was chance, a cosmic lottery ticket. Others speculate that the laws of physics themselves may require such a beginning. Still others wonder whether our very idea of entropy and beginnings is incomplete. hinting at deeper principles we do not yet grasp. Here we see contrast. To the human mind, time feels alive, flowing, unstoppable. But to physics, it is indifferent, a coordinate in a vast mathematical structure. Past, present, and future all exist, like frames on a reel of film. We march through them, convinced of flow, while the equations sit unmoved. This is the essence of the block universe theory. The idea that all of time exists simultaneously, that nothing is created or destroyed, only experienced from different vantage points. Einstein himself leaned toward this vision. In a letter of condolence to the family of a departed friend, he wrote, "For us convinced physicists, the distinction between past, present, and future is only a stubbornly persistent illusion." To him, the river of time was a trick of consciousness. The universe does not grow older, it simply is. And yet, we resist this notion. If the block universe is real, why do we experience time as motion? Why do we feel change, memory, anticipation? Some argue that entropy provides the answer. We remember the past because entropy was lower then, and we cannot remember the future because entropy has not yet unfolded. Memory itself is entangled with thermodynamics. But this is an unsatisfying answer to many because it explains correlation, not causation. It tells us why the arrow is visible, but not why it should exist at all. Consider relativity. In Einstein's universe, there is no universal present, no master clock ticking in unison for all observers. Each of us moves through space-time at different velocities, under different gravities, and each of us experiences time accordingly. For an astronaut moving at near light speed, seconds may stretch into hours for those left behind on Earth. The simultaneity we take for granted, the idea that two events happen at the same time, is destroyed by relativity. Two observers in different states of motion will disagree about what is now. This alone should shake our confidence in the present moment. If no universal now exists, then what does it mean to speak of time's flow? Relativity paints a cosmos where past and future are as real as the present, woven into a four-dimensional fabric. The human experience of a moving present becomes even more suspect, a projection of our psychology rather than a feature of reality itself. If the block universe is correct, then nothing truly passes. Instead, every event, every breath you have taken, every word you will ever speak, is etched permanently into space-time. You are not moving through time, you are extending within it. This leads us to one of the most profound questions in physics. Is time fundamental or emergent? Some physicists suspect that time, like temperature, may not be a basic ingredient of reality, but rather a collective effect of deeper, timeless laws. Just as temperature emerges from the motion of countless atoms, time itself might emerge from the interactions of more fundamental entities. If true, then the arrow of time is not the engine of the cosmos, but merely the story we tell when looking from within. Here again, science meets philosophy. If time is emergent, then our lived reality, the feeling of now, the dread of aging, the longing for the future, is built upon something illusory. And yet, illusions can be powerful. A rainbow is not a physical object, but it can fill us with wonder. The colors we see are not truly in the world, but in our minds, yet they shape how we navigate reality. Perhaps time is such an illusion, one that binds consciousness to matter, one that gives shape to the formless. Still, even as physics destabilizes time, it cannot ignore the arrow we observe. Black holes evaporate, stars burn out, galaxies drift apart. The universe is a stage of irreversible events. And though equations are symmetric, the world we inhabit is not. This contrast is haunting. On paper, time is reversible, but in life, it is not. Why the difference? Some argue that quantum mechanics holds the answer. At the deepest level, particles behave probabilistically, and the collapse of a quantum wave function might create irreversibility. Each measurement fixes reality into one outcome, cutting off the alternative futures. If so, then the arrow of time may emerge from quantum decisions written into the fabric of the universe. But others argue that even quantum laws are time-symmetric, and the collapse is only apparent. The debate continues, unresolved. Imagine then the existential weight of these scientific puzzles. To physics, your death has already happened, etched into the block universe as surely as your birth. To you, it lies ahead, looming with anticipation or dread. To physics, the universe does not age. To you, it does. To physics, the arrow is a shadow of entropy. To you, it is the march of your life. Which is more real, the indifferent equations, or the beating heart that feels its seconds? This contrast between the timeless and the lived is the heart of the prison of now. On one side, the cold certainty of physics denies flow. On the other, the warmth of human experience insists upon it. We cannot easily reconcile the two. Perhaps both are true, perhaps neither. Perhaps time is like light, sometimes wave, sometimes particle, depending on how you look. As we stand in this paradox, one thing becomes clear. To understand the present, we must not only explore the physics of time, but also the biology of perception. For what if the arrow we feel is not in the universe at all, but in us? What if the river of time flows only through the neural pathways of the brain, binding scattered signals into continuity? To answer that, we must turn from the cosmos to the mind, from the vastness of relativity to the narrow span of perception. For though physics may dismantle the flow of time, it cannot explain why we feel it so deeply. That is the task of neuroscience. And so, as the arrow of time fades into debate, as the block universe stands against the human sense of becoming, we move forward, ironically, into the next chapter of our exploration. What if the present is not written into the cosmos at all, but constructed within the brain? What if the prison of now is not a law of physics, but a trick of consciousness? To uncover that possibility, we must journey into the science of the mind. The cosmos may not care about the present moment, but the brain does. For us, now is not a trivial coordinate in space-time. It is the stage upon which every thought, every sensation, every breath of life unfolds. Without a sense of now, there could be no memory, no anticipation, no identity. And yet, when we look closely, the present that feels so immediate, so undeniable, turns out to be another construction, assembled by the machinery of the mind. Neuroscience begins with a simple observation. Our senses do not deliver reality instantly. Light strikes the eye, sound waves vibrate the ear, touch travels through nerves, but these signals take time to process. Neural impulses crawl along axons, synapses transmit chemical messages, and the brain integrates them into perception. By the time you become aware of a sound or a sight, tens or even hundreds of milliseconds have already passed. The now you feel is already slightly behind the world. Consciousness is a delayed broadcast, but the brain compensates for this lag. Instead of delivering raw signals as they arrive, it stitches them into a coherent frame of experience. It waits, a fraction of a second, gathers input from all senses, and presents them as if simultaneous. The result is a moving window of perception, about 2 or 3 seconds wide, within which the brain blends events into a seamless now. The present is not a razor-thin moment, but a stretched interval, a bubble of awareness that gives continuity to life. This window explains why we can hear a melody rather than just disconnected notes, why a sentence unfolds as meaning rather than scattered syllables. The brain gathers slices of time, binds them, and serves them as a flowing now. You are never living in the exact moment of reality. You are always inhabiting a brain-generated construct, a useful fiction. Consider memory. We imagine the past as a vast archive, a library of moments we can retrieve at will. In truth, memory is fragile, reconstructive, and deeply intertwined with the present. Each time you recall an event, the brain rebuilds it, reshaping it to fit current context and emotion. Memory is not a recording, but a recreation. In this sense, the past lives not behind us, but within the now, constantly revised, constantly folded into the moment. Anticipation works the same way. The brain is not simply waiting for the future, it is actively predicting it. Every time you reach for a glass, catch a ball, or walk across a street, neural circuits generate expectations about what comes next. The present you inhabit is part perception, part prediction. The brain runs a simulation, and consciousness inhabits its output. In this way, the now is not just a mirror of the world, but a forecast. It contains the past in memory, the future in anticipation, and only a thin slice of actual sensory input. This raises a profound question. Is there such a thing as the present at all? Or is it always a hybrid of what has just happened and what is about to happen? Neuroscience suggests that the brain does not live in the instant, but in a corridor of time, blending perception, memory, and expectation. The prison of now may not even be a single cell, but a hallway, stretching just far enough to give us the illusion of continuity. Different brain systems contribute to this construction. The hippocampus stitches together memories into temporal order, allowing you to recall what came first and what followed. The prefrontal cortex simulates possible futures, testing them against the present. The cerebellum, often called the timekeeper of the brain, synchronizes motor actions with millisecond precision, ensuring that a spoken word emerges with rhythm and a violin bow moves with grace. Without these systems, time collapses. Patients with damage to specific brain regions sometimes lose the ability to order events, to anticipate sequences, to live in anything but fragmented instants. Their lives illustrate just how much of the present depends on neural architecture. Even our emotional states shape our sense of now. When you are anxious, time accelerates, the present feels unstable, the future presses in with urgency. When you are bored, time drags, each second swells, the now becomes a heavy burden. Dopamine, the brain's currency of anticipation, stretches and contracts time depending on reward. Serotonin alters the rhythm of waiting. The chemicals of mood and motivation bend the fabric of subjective time, just as gravity bends the fabric of space-time. There is also evidence that different species live in different temporal scales. A fly perceives the world in rapid flashes, reacting with astonishing speed to swats and threats. To a fly, our movements appear sluggish, the present elongated. A human, by contrast, stitches events into broader intervals, allowing reflection and planning. To live as a fly is to inhabit a different now than a human. The present is not universal, even across life. It is scaled to the nervous system that perceives it. This relativity of now echoes what physics tells us about time itself. Just as relativity denies a single universal present in space-time, neuroscience denies a single universal present in consciousness. Each brain constructs its own window, its own corridor of perception. The present is not given but built, and no two constructions are identical. Perhaps most astonishing is the possibility that the brain's sense of now is tied to survival. To navigate a dangerous world, an organism must integrate past and future, stitching them into a coherent field of awareness. Too short a present, and life would fracture into chaos. Too long, and reaction would be too slow. Evolution shaped the brain to construct a present just wide enough to act, to survive, to flourish. In this way, the now is not a truth, but an adaptation, a tool honed by natural selection. This adaptation, however, comes with existential consequences. Because the present is a construction, it can be manipulated. Drugs, meditation, trauma, and neurological disorders all alter the shape of now. Under psychedelics, time dilates, moments stretch into eternity. Under stress, time compresses, events blur together. In deep meditation, some report the dissolution of time altogether, an eternal present with no before or after. The prison of now, it seems, has elastic walls, and yet, no matter how it bends, we cannot step outside it. Every thought, every sensation, Every dream occurs within the frame of the present moment as the brain constructs it. Even memory, even anticipation is experienced as now. The mind cannot escape the stage it builds. It can only reshape it. Here lies the link between physics and neuroscience. Physics tells us that the present is an illusion because the universe does not flow. Neuroscience tells us that the present is an illusion because the brain constructs it. Two illusions overlapping, one cosmic, one biological, and together they define the boundaries of human existence. The implications are profound. If the present is a construct, then so is the self. For what are you, except the collection of memories, anticipations, and perceptions gathered into the bubble of now? The continuity of identity, the story of who you are, is assembled in the same way the present is assembled. Without memory, the self dissolves. Without anticipation, the self stagnates. You are not a fixed entity moving through time, but a narrative woven by the brain into the fabric of now. This recognition can be unsettling, but it can also be liberating. If the present is constructed, it can be reshaped. Through practices like mindfulness, people learn to widen their awareness, to perceive the construction itself, to notice the stitching of past and future into the moment. In doing so, they glimpse the machinery of the prison and sometimes, in rare moments, step beyond it. Still, most of the time, we remain captives, and perhaps that is necessary. For without the prison of now, there could be no music, no speech, no story. The very fact that you are listening to these words, threading them together into meaning, depends on the brain's construction of temporal continuity. The prison is also the stage upon which beauty unfolds. As we reflect on this, we see the strange harmony between physics and neuroscience. Physics denies the flowing present because time is symmetric. Neuroscience denies the flowing present because perception is constructed. Both converge on the same truth. The now is not fundamental. It is a convenience, a creation, a useful lie, and yet it is all we have. From here, the path leads naturally to psychology and philosophy. For if the present is an illusion of the brain, then how should we live within it? If the self is a story told in the now, what does that mean for meaning, for memory, for mortality? Does recognizing the prison of now diminish life, or does it give us the keys to live more fully within it? These are questions that move beyond neurons and equations into the domain of the human spirit. And so, as we close this exploration of the brain's construction of time, we open the door to deeper inquiry. Physics stripped the present of universality. Neuroscience stripped it of immediacy. Now psychology and philosophy will strip it of certainty, asking not only what time is, but what it means to live within it. The next step in our journey is not about the mechanics of now, but about the human heart that longs to escape it. The brain taught us that the present is not a fundamental truth, but a construction, a window assembled out of perception, memory, and anticipation. Neuroscience reveals that the now we inhabit is stitched together by neurons and chemicals, a fragile bubble shaped for survival. And yet, even after seeing the mechanics, the question remains, what does it feel like to live inside this construction? Science can tell us how the brain works, but it cannot fully capture the texture of human experience, the way time bends in joy, collapses in grief, or stretches in boredom. To enter that realm, we must turn to psychology and philosophy, to the voices that have wrestled not only with the mechanics of time, but with its meaning. Psychology begins where neuroscience ends, with the subjective. We know that seconds, minutes, and hours are measured evenly on a clock, but in the mind, they refuse to stay equal. A joyful day vanishes in a heartbeat, while a moment of waiting can drag like an eternity. This elasticity of time is so common, we hardly notice it, yet it shapes every corner of our lives. Children feel summers as endless expanses, while adults experience the same months as fleeting and compressed. The difference is not in the calendar, but in perception. Time is not lived as numbers, but as sensations. Why does this happen? Psychologists suggest that novelty plays a role. The brain encodes new experiences with greater density, creating the impression of longer duration when recalled later. Childhood feels vast because everything is new, every day saturated with firsts. In adulthood, routine blurs days together, compressing months into forgettable fragments. This makes life feel shorter as we age, not because time changes, but because our recording of it grows thinner. In this way, the prison of now tightens with age, and yet, psychology also shows how the mind can stretch the present. Athletes speak of flow states, where time seems to vanish, where past and future fall away, and only the intensity of now remains. In trauma, the opposite occurs. Seconds dilate, awareness fragments. The present becomes unbearable. Both extremes reveal the malleability of psychological time, the way the mind sculpts the moment into forms that physics would never recognize. Philosophy takes us deeper still. Augustine, writing over 1,600 years ago, confessed that he knew what time was until someone asked him to explain it. Then suddenly, the concept slipped through his grasp. He noted that the past no longer exists, the future has not yet come, and the present vanishes as soon as we try to hold it. How, then, can time exist at all? Augustine concluded that time must be something within us, not outside, a tension of the soul stretched between memory and anticipation. Centuries later, Henry Bergson offered a similar insight. For him, the clock's ticks were not the essence of time but a distortion of it. Real time, he argued, was duration, a qualitative flow experienced by consciousness. The present is not a point, but a living continuum, infused with memory and propelled by becoming. To reduce it to measurement is to kill it, to dissect a living stream into lifeless fragments. Heidegger, in the 20th century, took an even, more radical stance. For him, human existence, what he called Dasein, was defined by its temporality. We are beings thrown into time, oriented always toward the future, toward our own mortality. The present is never neutral. It is shaped by the shadow of the end. Time is not a backdrop for life, but the very structure of being itself. To live is to be temporal, and to be temporal is to live always under the horizon of death. Edmund Husserl, founder of phenomenology, analyzed the now with microscopic care. He noticed that consciousness is never confined to an instant. When we hear a melody, we do not experience each note in isolation. Instead, each present note carries within it a fading trace of the previous and an anticipation of the next. He called this structure retention and pretension, the way the present is always accompanied by echoes of what has just been and intimations of what is about to come. For Husserl, the present was not a knife edge, but a woven fabric, a continuity of experience. These philosophical insights converge with psychology's findings. The now is elastic, layered, shaped by memory and expectation. But philosophy asks the deeper question, what does this mean for who we are? If the present is always saturated with the past and pulled by the future, can we ever truly live in the moment? Or is living in the present just another illusion, a comforting slogan that hides the truth that consciousness is always stretched, never still? Here we feel the tension. On one side, there is the modern obsession with mindfulness, the promise that we can escape suffering by anchoring ourselves fully in the present. On the other side, there is the philosophical recognition that the present is never pure, that it always carries the weight of memory and the pull of possibility. To live fully in the now may be impossible, not because of distraction, but because of the very structure of consciousness. Yet perhaps this impossibility is what makes the present so haunting. We are drawn to it because it slips away. We speak of being in the moment precisely because most of the time we are not. Like Augustine, we try to grasp it, only to watch it dissolve. Like Bergson, we feel its flow, but cannot measure it. Like Heidegger, we live in it while sensing that it is always overshadowed by the future's certainty, our own mortality. Psychology and philosophy both tell us the prison of now is both real and illusory. Real because we cannot escape it. Every thought, every memory, every dream must occur within its boundaries. Illusory because the present itself is never singular, never pure. It is always a construction, a layering, a narrative. The now we live is not a single cell, but a kaleidoscope. This realization invites both despair and liberation. If the present is a construct, then perhaps our suffering within it is also a construct. If time bends with perception, perhaps we can bend it toward beauty, toward meaning. If the self is woven out of temporal strands, then perhaps it can be rewoven. But at the same time, we cannot escape the final horizon. Time, however elastic in experience, is finite in existence. Mortality closes the loop, and every present moment is haunted by that end. This duality is what makes time philosophy so captivating. It is not merely an abstract puzzle, but a mirror held up to our lives. We chase happiness, memory, purpose, but always within the narrow corridor of now. We imagine the future. We treasure the past, but we can only feel them as shadows within the present. Every love, every fear, every hope, compressed into this fragile frame. And so, psychology and philosophy meet at the same conclusion. The present is not something we inhabit like a room, but something we generate like a story. It is narrative, perception, tension. It is fleeting and yet eternal, fragile and yet absolute. The paradox is inescapable. From here, the path ahead grows even stranger. For if science shows that the present is a construction of the brain and philosophy shows that the present is a construction of consciousness, then we are left to ask, construction upon what? Is there a deeper layer, a reality beneath perception and thought, where time exists in ways we cannot fathom? Or is time itself nothing but the illusion, a veil hiding the true fabric of existence? These questions open the door to speculation, beyond psychology, beyond philosophy, into metaphysics, cosmology, and the mysteries of consciousness itself. And that is where we now turn. For the prison of now may not only confine us within the human mind, it may be part of the very structure of the universe. The deeper we go into the study of time, the more it resists simplicity. Psychology and philosophy showed us that the present is not pure, that memory and anticipation always bleed into now. But physics and philosophy together uncover paradoxes. So profound they challenge the very possibility of time itself. The human mind strains to hold these contradictions, and yet they are unavoidable if we hope to understand what time truly is, or whether it is anything at all. One of the oldest paradoxes comes from the ancient philosopher Zeno of Elea. He asked, how motion is possible if time can be divided into infinitely small instants? To cross a room, you must first travel half the distance, then half of what remains, then half again, and so on. The sequence never ends. By this logic, motion should be impossible, yet we move with ease. Zeno's paradox was meant to challenge our assumptions about infinity and continuity, but its echoes remain today in quantum physics, where the graininess of reality raises the question, can time itself be infinitely divisible, or does it come in discrete quanta? From Zeno, we leap forward 2,000 years to J. M. E. McTaggart, who declared that time itself was unreal. He distinguished between two ways of ordering events, the A series and the B series. In the A series, events are divided into past, present, and future, the way we usually experience time. In the B series, events are only earlier or later than each other, with no privileged present. McTaggart argued that the A series led to contradictions, and without it, time loses its essential character. If he is right, then what we call time is only an illusion draped over a timeless order. The paradox lies in our insistence on a flowing present when the structure of reality may hold no such flow. Physics adds its own paradoxes, beginning with the relativity of simultaneity. In Einstein's theory of relativity, there is no universal now. Two observers moving relative to one another will disagree on which events are simultaneous. For one, a star may already have exploded. For another, it has yet to occur. The present is not shared but fractured, dependent on perspective. If this is true, then the idea of a single flowing moment is an artifact of human perception, not a property of the universe. The paradox is that while our experience insists on a universal now, physics denies it completely. Relativity also leads to the idea of the block universe. If all events, past, present, and future, exist equally within spacetime, then time does not flow. It simply is. We imagine ourselves moving through time, but in the block view, our journey is an illusion. Every event is fixed, every moment eternal, every life a completed story written into the fabric of spacetime. Yet, if this is true, what becomes of free will, of becoming, of the open possibilities that seem to define human existence? The paradox is between determinism and experience, between a frozen cosmos and the living immediacy of now. Another paradox arises from entropy, the arrow of time. The laws of physics are time-symmetric. They work equally well forward or backward. Yet in our experience, time has a direction. We remember the past but not the future. We see eggs break but never spontaneously reassemble. We grow older, never younger. Entropy increases, and with it, time seems to flow. But why should entropy give time a direction when the underlying laws do not? This mismatch between symmetry and experience is one of the deepest paradoxes of physics. Some suggest that entropy's arrow emerges from boundary conditions at the birth of the universe. But even then, why should the universe have begun in such a state? The paradox remains unresolved. Quantum mechanics adds further puzzles. In certain interpretations, the act of measurement collapses a wave function, freezing probabilities into outcomes. But collapse itself is not described by the equations of physics. Where, then, does the moment of now arise? If the universe is governed by probabilities that only crystallize upon observation, then time may be entangled with consciousness itself. This raises unsettling possibilities, that the present moment is not simply observed, but co-created by the observer. The paradox here is between the deterministic evolution of quantum systems and the sudden, asymmetric act of measurement. Philosophy, for its part, has never stopped wrestling with these scientific revelations. Augustine wondered how time could exist if the past is gone and the future not yet real. Bergson rejected the mechanistic clock in favor of lived duration. Heidegger saw time as the horizon of being, inseparable from human mortality. Each of these views runs up against the paradox that time is both undeniable and indefinable. We cannot live without it, yet we cannot pin it down without contradiction. Taken together, these paradoxes suggest that time might not be a fundamental feature of reality, but an emergent one. Perhaps time is like temperature, arising only at a certain scale of description. Just as molecules alone do not have heat, but collectively create it, perhaps the universe at its deepest level has no time, only timeless processes from which our sense of flow emerges. If so, the paradox is that time both is and is not, an illusion that nonetheless governs our every thought. But even this speculation faces resistance. For if time is not real, why do we experience it so vividly? If the block universe is correct, why do we feel ourselves moving through it? If entropy explains the arrow, why does the future remain open in our imagination while the past feels fixed? The paradox is not only in physics or philosophy, but in the gap between them and lived experience. We inhabit contradictions that neither theory nor reflection can fully dissolve. These paradoxes matter because they shape how we understand existence itself. If time is unreal, then what is the meaning of change? If the future already exists, what becomes of freedom? If the present is only a construct, what becomes of meaning? These are not abstract puzzles, but existential challenges, forcing us to confront whether our deepest intuitions about life are lies told by consciousness to itself. And yet, paradox can also be fertile. Each contradiction forces us to widen our vision, to see from a higher perspective. Zeno's paradox pushed mathematics toward calculus. Relativity's paradox reshaped physics into a new understanding of space-time. The entropy paradox drives cosmology to question the origins of the universe. Paradox is not only confusion, but the engine of discovery. In this sense, the paradoxes of time are not walls, but doorways, leading us deeper into the mystery. Where do these doorways lead? Some point toward the multiverse, where time is only one variable among countless possibilities. Others point toward quantum gravity, where space and time may dissolve into something more fundamental. Still others point inward, toward consciousness itself, as the source of temporal experience. The paradoxes of time do not give us answers, but they open horizons, hinting that reality is far stranger than we can imagine. And so, we stand at a crossroads. On one side, physics tells us time is symmetric, eternal, perhaps unreal. On the other, philosophy tells us time is lived, felt, inescapable. Between them lies the paradox that defines the human condition. We live in a present that physics denies, in a flow that philosophy doubts, in a story that neuroscience says is stitched together from fragments. To live is to inhabit contradiction. This realization brings us to the threshold of our next exploration. For if time is paradoxical in physics and philosophy alike, then perhaps the way forward is to consider that time may not be the ultimate framework at all. Perhaps beneath the prison of now lies a deeper structure, one in which time itself is not the foundation, but the facade. In the next chapter, we turn to these speculative horizons, ideas that suggest reality may be timeless at its core, and that the present moment is but a shadow cast on the walls of a greater mystery. If the paradoxes of time show us anything, it is that our familiar sense of the present may not be the final truth. Physics, philosophy, and lived experience have each pulled at the threads, and what unravels is the possibility that time is not fundamental. But if not time, then what? What deeper horizon lies beneath the ticking of the clock, beneath the flowing of moments, beneath the prison of now? To imagine such horizons is to step into a space both scientific and speculative, rigorous and dreamlike. Here, theories of physics collide with visions of consciousness and cosmology, each daring to suggest that timelessness may be the truer ground of reality. One of the most profound attempts to escape the tyranny of time is found in the Wheeler-DeWitt equation. Born from the effort to merge quantum mechanics with general relativity, this equation describes the universe not as something evolving in time, but as a static wave function. There is no variable for time within it. Instead, the entire universe is represented as a timeless state. From this perspective, time is not a river flowing forward, but an illusion emerging only when we look at certain patterns within the whole. What we call now is not a universal fact, but a perspective carved out of a timeless reality. But this picture is unsettling. If the Wheeler-DeWitt equation is correct, then the entire history of the cosmos is contained in a single unchanging state. The universe does not happen, it simply is. Time, then, is a trick of the mind, a way of reading meaning into the frozen architecture of reality. Yet we cannot dismiss this idea, because it emerges not from mysticism, but from our most advanced physics. Other speculative theories attempt to go even further. Consider loop quantum gravity, where space and time themselves are quantized into discrete loops of geometry. In this view, the smooth flow of time dissolves into a lattice of relationships. Time does not exist as an independent dimension, but arises from how events relate to one another. Here, timelessness is not a void, but a network of connections, where what matters is not when something happens, but how it relates to the rest of the web. String theory offers another speculative horizon. In its higher dimensional frameworks, time may be just one coordinate among many, not privileged, but contingent. In certain formulations, Time even splits or folds back upon itself, suggesting that what we call temporal flow may be a projection of a deeper multidimensional reality. If this is true, then the present moment is like a shadow cast on a wall, its contours shaped by unseen dimensions. Beyond physics, speculative thought turns inward, toward the role of consciousness. Some suggest that time itself is born from the act of observation, that the collapse of quantum possibilities into definite outcomes is tied to awareness. In this view, timelessness is the fundamental state, and the sense of now is the creative contribution of mind. Consciousness does not simply perceive time, it generates it, weaving order from timeless probabilities. This is a radical suggestion, placing the human experience of now at the center of reality's unfolding. If true, it would mean that timelessness is not distant or abstract, but the ground from which every thought and sensation arises. And then there is the holographic principle, one of the boldest speculative horizons in modern physics. According to this idea, our universe may be a holographic projection from a deeper reality on the boundary of space-time. If so, time itself could be a derived quantity, not a fundamental one. Just as a hologram creates the illusion of depth from flat information, perhaps our universe creates the illusion of temporal flow from timeless codes written on its edge. This vision is almost mythic. Reality as a shadow play, time as an artifact of projection. Each of these speculative horizons shares a common theme. Time may not be the bedrock of reality, but an emergent phenomenon, arising from something deeper. Whether it is the static wave function of the universe, the spin networks of quantum geometry, the folds of higher dimensions, the entanglement of holographic codes, or the creative role of consciousness, the suggestion is the same. Beneath the surface lies timelessness. But how can timelessness give rise to the lived intensity of now? Imagine a film reel. The entire movie exists at once as a sequence of frames, timeless in its totality. Yet when projected, frame by frame, we experience story, motion, and flow. Perhaps reality is something like this, a timeless structure that, when encountered from within, generates the sensation of temporal passage. The paradox of timelessness is that it does not negate time, but gives birth to its illusion. Speculative horizons also invite us to think about death and immortality. If time is not fundamental, what becomes of beginnings and endings? In a timeless universe, birth and death may be perspectives, not absolutes. Consciousness may not vanish into nothing, but return to the timeless ground from which it arose. The present moment, then, is not a fleeting spark lost to the void, but a window into eternity. This is not proof of immortality, but it is a reminder that timelessness undermines our deepest fears about the end of time. Critics, of course, remind us that speculation is not evidence. The Wheeler-DeWitt equation, loop quantum gravity, string, theory, holography, each is incomplete, contested, unfinished. None has delivered the final word on time. But this, too, is part of the horizon. Horizons are not certainties but directions, hints of where deeper truths may lie. To look toward timelessness is not to declare victory over the mystery, but to admit that the mystery is larger than we thought. What unites all these horizons is the call to humility. Time feels absolute, but perhaps it is not. Time feels like flow, but perhaps it is structure. Time feels like the measure of existence, but perhaps it is only a lens. To consider timelessness is to confront the possibility that our deepest intuitions may be wrong, and yet, in being wrong, may point to something even greater. And so, we are left with an image, the present moment, luminous and fleeting, resting on a vast ocean of timelessness. Each second we live may be a ripple on the surface of an eternal sea, a translation of the timeless into the temporal. To live, then, is to participate in a cosmic transformation, timelessness becoming now. This vision prepares us for the next step in our journey, for if timelessness lies beneath time, then perhaps consciousness itself is the bridge. How does the mind carve now from the eternal? How does experience create the flow of moments from the static fabric of reality? These questions lead us into the next frontier, the role of awareness, memory, and imagination in shaping our perception of the present. To explore timelessness is not enough. We must also explore how timelessness becomes time through us. If timelessness is the hidden foundation of reality, then consciousness is the architect that builds time's illusion upon it. The physics of the universe may whisper that there is no privileged present, no true passage of time, only a vast block of existence already complete. Yet the human mind refuses to live in such a frozen cosmos. Instead, it conjures a moving window, this moment, right now, through which experience seems to flow. Consciousness, in its quiet power, generates the rhythm of past, present, and future, transforming an eternal landscape into the intimate corridors of our lived reality. To understand how consciousness creates the now, we must first notice the strange role of memory. Augustine once remarked that time itself may reside not in the universe but in the soul. The past survives only in memory, the future exists only in expectation, and the present is stretched thin between them. Modern neuroscience echoes this ancient insight. Our brains are constantly stitching fragments of perception with echoes of memory and anticipations of what might come next. What we call the present is, in fact, a constructed scene, assembled out of elements that do not belong to it. By the time you hear a note of music or see a flash of light, fractions of a second have already passed. The now you experience is delayed, yet it feels immediate because your mind erases the gap. This raises a startling possibility. The present is not something we inhabit, but something we invent. Consciousness manufactures a seamless window from pieces of what has already happened and hints of what has not yet occurred. The now is a stage built moment by moment, where memory supplies the backdrop, perception casts the characters, and anticipation directs the play. Without this mental theatre, reality would be a blur of disconnected impressions. With it, we are granted the illusion of continuity, the feeling of time's flow. But illusion does not mean irrelevance. The power of consciousness lies precisely in its ability to transform the eternal into the experiential. Henri Bergson, the French philosopher, argued that true time, what he called duration, is not the spatialized sequence of physics, but the living rhythm of consciousness. Duration is felt, not measured. It expands when we are lost in joy, contracts when we are gripped by fear, and stretches unbearably when we wait in silence. Physics may reduce time to coordinates, but life insists that time is elastic. This elasticity is not a trick. It is the way consciousness translates timeless reality into lived meaning. Consider also the brain's predictive nature. Neuroscience increasingly shows that perception is less about recording the present than about forecasting it. Our minds are prediction engines, constantly modeling what will happen next based on past experience. When those predictions align with incoming signals, the world feels stable. When they falter, surprise bursts into awareness. Thus, the present moment is not passively received, but actively constructed, shaped by expectation as much as sensation. In this sense, the now is an act of imagination, a negotiation between what is and what we believe is about to be. This constructive power blurs the line between objectivity and subjectivity. Two people may stand in the same room, hearing the same ticking clock, yet their experiences of the moment diverge. One feels the seconds crawl, the other feels them rush. Their consciousnesses create different nows, sculpted by attention, emotion, and memory. There is no single present moment, but as many as there are minds to perceive it. Consciousness fractures the timeless into countless perspectives, each insisting that its version of now is real. And yet, beneath this plurality, something unites us. The now may be constructed differently in each mind, but its central role never changes. Consciousness cannot escape the present because it is the only place experience can occur. Memory exists only when recalled in the now. Anticipation is imagined only from the now. Even reflection on timelessness, even speculation about eternity, must unfold here in this fragile window. In this sense, consciousness and the present are inseparable, two sides of the same coin. The present does not exist without consciousness, and consciousness cannot exist outside the present. Philosophers like Edmund Husserl sought to map this relationship with painstaking care. He described consciousness as structured by retention, the just past that lingers, primal impression, the vivid now, and pretension, the anticipated future already leaning into awareness. For Husserl, the present moment is not a point but a span, a horizon that holds echoes and foreshadowings together. Consciousness does not trap us in an instant, but weaves a tapestry where the threads of past and future stretch across a shimmering present. In this model, time is not given, it is enacted. Heidegger too saw existence itself as temporal. To be human, he claimed, is to be thrown into time, constantly projecting ourselves forward while rooted in what has already been. Our very identity is temporal, shaped by memories we inherit, goals we pursue, and the looming awareness of mortality. In this light, consciousness does not merely create now, it is now, stretched between birth and death, finite yet capable of glimpsing the infinite. The prison of the present becomes, paradoxically, the arena of freedom. Yet this freedom is shadowed by fragility. The same consciousness that creates continuity can also falter. Consider neurological disorders like amnesia, where memory fractures, or conditions where the perception of time distorts dramatically. In such cases, the present moment collapses or stretches beyond recognition. These conditions remind us that now is not an external given, but a fragile achievement of the mind. Consciousness is the craftsman of time, and when it stumbles, the illusion shatters. But why should consciousness create time at all? Perhaps because life demands it. Survival depends on predicting threats, remembering lessons, and navigating change. A timeless organism would be incapable of adaptation. Consciousness evolved not to reveal timeless truth, but to carve useful illusions. The present moment, then, is not a mirror of reality, but a survival strategy, an interface between timeless physics and biological necessity. Still, speculation pushes further. Some suggest that consciousness does not merely construct time, but that time itself arises from consciousness. If observation collapses quantum possibilities into actual events, then perhaps awareness is the engine that converts timeless probabilities into temporal realities. In this view, the present is not just perceived, but created at the deepest level of physics. Time flows because consciousness demands it. The now is not a passive stage, but the very act of creation. This radical idea unsettles traditional boundaries between mind and matter. It suggests that the flow of time is not written into the cosmos, but arises through the participation of conscious observers. The universe does not present us with time. We present time to the universe. If true, then every conscious moment is a cosmological event, weaving timelessness into temporal experience. Even if this remains speculative, the implications are profound. It means that consciousness is not merely trapped in the present, but is the very reason the present exists. The prison of now is, in fact, a palace built by the mind, complete with doors that open into memory and windows that gaze into the future. We do not live in the now by necessity alone. We live in it because we create it. This brings us back to the existential dimension. To live is to live now, but the now is not given. It is chosen, shaped, expanded, or diminished by attention. Mindfulness practices remind us of this truth, urging us to inhabit the present with awareness rather than let it slip unnoticed. In doing so, we reclaim some authorship over the time we create. The more deeply we attend, the more richly the present unfolds. The less we attend, the thinner and more fragile it becomes. And so we discover that the prison of the present is not simply confinement, but possibility. Consciousness cannot escape the now, but it can shape it. Within this narrow corridor, entire worlds of meaning, memory, and imagination arise. Within this fleeting moment, eternity itself may shimmer. As we leave this section, we stand at a threshold. We have seen how consciousness constructs the illusion of flow, how philosophy charts the structures of lived time, how speculation dares to link awareness with the fabric of the cosmos. The next step is to ask, if consciousness builds the now, then what larger truths does this reveal about reality itself? Does the creation of the present point toward hidden dimensions, toward collective patterns, toward mysteries yet unimagined? The journey ahead leads us deeper into the intersection of physics, metaphysics, and meaning, where the boundaries of time dissolve and new horizons open before us. If the mind alone could create the present, then each of us would be sealed within our own bubble of time, forever isolated in the rhythms of our private consciousness. Yet human beings do not live as solitary islands. We live in communities, in cultures, in civilizations that require not only shared language and values, but also a shared sense of time. The present is never wholly personal. It is also collective, an agreement we make with one another about when we are and where we stand in the unfolding of existence. Consciousness may shape individual now moments, but it is through collective synchronization that we inhabit a shared present. From the earliest days of humanity, this synchronization has been essential. Before clocks, calendars, or even writing, our ancestors looked to the heavens. The rising and setting of the sun, the waxing and waning of the moon, the seasonal journey of the stars, these became the metronomes of collective time. Villages gathered when the moon was full, crops were planted when constellations appeared at dawn, rituals were performed when shadows fell just so. Time was not measured by seconds or minutes, but by cycles that the community could witness together. These rhythms bound individuals into a collective present, one marked by harvests, migrations, and celebrations. To live in time was to live in step with the cosmos, and thus with each other. Even now, traces of this cosmic synchronization shape us. New Year's Eve, synchronized midnight celebrations across the globe, echoes of solstices and equinoxes still etched into human ritual. Religious calendars anchor billions to cycles of fasting, feasting, and reflection. Workdays and weekends divide our lives into patterns we all recognize. Collective time is everywhere, and it is not optional. To function within society is to adjust our personal flow of now to the collective beat, whether it is the ringing of a school bell, the start of a work shift, or the countdown to a rocket launch. But this collective present is not merely practical, it is existential. To share a moment is to know we are not alone. When a crowd gasps together at a sudden event, when stadiums roar as one voice, when families pause at the same instant for a meal or a prayer, the sense of now expands. Individual consciousness fuses into something larger, a shared field of experience. Neuroscience has begun to measure this phenomenon, showing how brainwaves can synchronize when people engage in joint activity. Choirs singing, dancers moving, audiences captivated. Our minds align their rhythms. The present moment, once fractured across countless individuals, becomes a collective pulse. This synchronization reveals something profound. The present is not only created within us, but also between us. It is relational. My now is shaped by yours, and yours by mine. Even in silence, even across distances, shared rhythms connect us. Consider how global events ripple across the world. When a tragedy unfolds, millions watch live broadcasts in real time, their awareness converging. When humanity lands a probe on another planet, billions share the same breathless now, their personal timelines momentarily woven into one. In such moments, the shared present becomes planetary. Yet collective time is not without tension. While physics tells us that simultaneity is relative, that there is no universal now across the cosmos, human life insists on creating one. Time zones attempt to order the planet, slicing the globe into shared hours. Coordinated universal time governs satellites, banks, and navigation systems. We have built a scaffold of artificial simultaneity to sustain our civilization. But beneath this scaffold, differences remain. Cultures perceive time differently. Some see it as linear progress, others as cyclical return. Some prioritize punctuality, others embrace fluidity. These variations remind us that collective time is not a given, but a negotiation, a fragile harmony sustained by agreement. Philosophy, too, has wrestled with this tension between private and collective time. Martin Heidegger described human existence as fundamentally temporal, yet always in relation to others. Our projects, our anxieties, our sense of mortality, these are not experienced in isolation, but in a shared world. To live authentically is to recognize how deeply our present is interwoven with others. Time is not simply mine, it is ours. Jean-Paul Sartre, from another angle, saw time as a fabric of freedom and conflict, where the presence of others constantly reshapes the horizon of my now. Even my solitude is structured by a collective frame. Technology has accelerated this intertwining. The internet collapses distances, binding billions into overlapping presents. A tweet crosses the globe in seconds. A live stream makes millions simultaneous witnesses. Never before has collective time been so instantaneous, so global, so fragile. For with this expansion comes overload. Countless nows colliding, competing for attention, fracturing our focus. The shared present grows vast, but also chaotic, demanding constant negotiation between personal rhythm and collective pulse. And yet, within this chaos, we glimpse a profound truth. Collective time reveals the depth of human interconnection. To share the present is to recognize that we are co-creators of reality, not only as solitary minds, but as a species. Each heartbeat of civilization is the product of synchronization, from the rhythms of work to the cycles of culture, from ancient rituals to digital networks. The present is not a solitary chamber, but a vast cathedral, built from the harmonies and dissonances of countless voices. Still, beneath this vision lies the paradox we cannot escape. Physics denies a universal present. Relativity insists that simultaneity is perspective, not fact. From the cosmos's point of view, there is no shared now, only individual slices of space-time, each relative to its observer. The collective, present then, is not a cosmic truth but a human invention. It is a fiction we agree upon, a necessary illusion that allows society to function and meaning to flourish. In this sense, collective time is no less a construction than the individual now of consciousness. But like the individual, it is an illusion that matters, one we cannot abandon without dissolving the bonds of civilization. Perhaps this is why collective rituals feel so powerful. When thousands count down together toward midnight, when chants echo through a crowd, when silence falls simultaneously at a memorial, we touch the mystery of time's duality. We know, rationally, that physics does not grant us a universal now, yet emotionally, experientially, we feel it. In these moments, the shared present is more than convenience. It is transcendence. For an instant, the prison of the individual now opens into something larger, a communal now that gestures toward eternity. This duality will guide us forward. The individual mind creates now, but the collective sustains it. Without synchronization, society fragments. Without society, individuals lose the mirrors that reflect their own presence. Time, then, is not just a feature of physics or psychology, but of relationship. To live in time is to live with others, to negotiate the rhythms of memory, expectation, and experience. And so we leave this section with a question. If collective time can stretch from small gatherings to planetary synchronization, could it stretch further still? Could consciousness, bound together across the species, or even across the cosmos, generate a shared present that transcends humanity itself? If the present is not merely within us, but between us, then perhaps the prison of now is not a cage at all, but the opening of a bridge, one that leads from individual awareness to a collective reality and beyond. To speak of time without speaking of death is to turn away from the deepest truth it carries. For every heartbeat of the present, every fragile breath we call now, is measured against the certainty of its vanishing. Time would be an abstract curiosity if not for the fact that it ends, and that it ends for us. Death is the horizon that shapes the present, the ultimate boundary that makes every now precious and every illusion fragile. Without death, time would stretch into meaninglessness. With death, every second vibrates with urgency. And so, to understand the prison of now, we must walk into the shadowed chamber of mortality. We are born without awareness of time. For the infant now is endless, a flowing field of sensation without future or past. But as soon as memory and anticipation awaken, death appears like a silent figure in the distance. First we hear of it in whispers, as the loss of others. Then we learn it belongs to us as well. The present acquires a new dimension. It becomes finite, bounded, edged by an absence that waits inevitably. Time is no longer just the movement of clocks or the rhythm of stars. It becomes the space in which we live, knowing it will run out. Philosophers have long recognized this binding of time and death. Martin Heidegger argued that death is not merely an event at the end of life, but a constant presence that shapes existence itself. To be human is to live toward death, to carry within each now the knowledge that it will vanish. This knowledge is both a weight and a liberation. It can crush us with dread, but it can also awaken us to authenticity, reminding us that every present is charged with a value it would not have if it were infinite. The prison of now becomes bearable, not in spite of death, but because of it. And yet, the awareness of death collides with the intuition of eternity. When we sit in silence and attend to the raw immediacy of the present, it can feel boundless, as though the moment stretches beyond time. Religious traditions across the world have spoken of this duality. The mystic claims to touch eternity in prayer or meditation. The poet speaks of timeless instants where joy or love suspends the ticking of the clock. The philosopher asks whether consciousness itself, unmeasured by clocks, participates in something beyond time. Death, then, is not only an ending, it is also the lens through which eternity comes into view. Science confronts this duality with its own paradox. From the perspective of physics, time is not a river flowing from birth to death, but a dimension in which all events exist. Past, present, and future are laid out together in the fabric of space-time. In this block universe, death does not erase existence, it fixes it. The moments of our lives remain etched forever in the geometry of the cosmos. What vanishes is not the event, but the experience of it. Our consciousness, tied to the arrow of time, cannot move backward, cannot revisit, cannot escape. Death closes, the door not on our existence but on our participation in it, and yet this view can feel cold, even unbearable. To tell the grieving that their loved one's moments are eternally inscribed in space-time offers little comfort when the warmth of presence has vanished. The human heart resists abstraction. We do not long for eternal coordinates. We long for living presence. This is the existential rift that death carves into our understanding of time. The dissonance between physics and feeling, between eternal inscription and mortal loss. Still, even within grief, there is a strange expansion of now. When confronted with death, we often find the present sharpened. Colours seem more vivid, silence more profound. Each encounter weighted with depth. The awareness of vanishing can paradoxically make the now feel eternal, as though loss reveals dimensions of time hidden in ordinary life. Funerals, vigils, memorials, all are collective attempts to hold the vanishing now, to stretch it, to resist its disappearance. The rituals of mourning are not merely about the past, they are about enlarging the present, keeping it open long enough to carry what must otherwise dissolve. Cultures across history have sought to reconcile death and eternity through myth and philosophy. Ancient Egyptians built monuments to ensure continuity into the afterlife, turning death into a gateway. Hindu traditions speak of cycles of rebirth, where death is not an end, but a passage into another now. Christian theology envisions eternal life, where time itself is transfigured into divine presence. In all of these, the present moment becomes a rehearsal for eternity, a seed of something that survives the vanishing of now. Whether one believes or doubts, the persistence of these visions reveals a human need to imagine that the prison of now does not collapse into nothingness, but opens onto something vast. Yet modern thought often pushes us toward the opposite horizon, the stark acceptance that death ends consciousness, and with it, the present. To embrace this view is to see each now as unrepeatable, each experience as a fragile singularity. Rather than eternity, we are offered finitude. But this finitude is not devoid of meaning. It is the source of meaning. A painting is precious because it can be destroyed. A life is luminous because it ends. Here, the vanishing of now is not an enemy, but the very condition that gives it fire. Still, there lingers the question, what is it that vanishes? Does the now itself disappear, or is it absorbed into memory, into history, into the fabric of space-time? We speak of the present as fleeting, gone in an instant. But perhaps it does not vanish so much as transform. Each now becomes the past, but in memory, in record, in the lives of others, it lingers. Even death cannot wholly erase presence. It redistributes it. A laugh becomes an echo in someone else's memory. A touch becomes a trace in another's heart. The now vanishes for the one who lived it, but fragments of it remain in the collective fabric. In this sense, death does not simply end the present. It passes it on. This raises the possibility that the now is never truly lost. If space-time holds every event, and memory carries fragments forward, then death may not erase but relocate presence. Our awareness ceases, but the moments we lived remain inscribed in the cosmos, in culture, in consciousness beyond our own. Eternity, then, may not mean endless life, but endless inscription, the refusal of reality to let anything truly disappear. The vanishing of now is never absolute. It is only a transformation of form. And yet, the mystery deepens when we reflect on the subjective core of now. For what we lose in death is not the inscription of events, but the ability to inhabit them. Eternity may preserve every moment, but without a consciousness to experience it, is it truly presence? This is where the prison of now becomes most haunting. It is not time itself that vanishes, but our window into it. Death is the closure of perspective, the extinguishing of the only light that makes eternity visible. Without awareness, eternity is mute. With awareness, even a fleeting now can feel infinite. Perhaps this is why so many traditions seek to reconcile death not through physics, but through consciousness. Some imagine the survival of the soul, the persistence of awareness beyond the body. Others envision dissolution into a larger consciousness, where individuality is lost, but awareness continues in a greater whole. Still others see death as awakening, the moment when the illusion of linear time collapses and true eternity is revealed. Whether these visions are truth or comfort, they reveal the intuition that the vanishing of now cannot be the end. 4. To imagine a world without now is to imagine a world without meaning. As we wrestle with these possibilities, we return to the paradox at the heart of existence. Death gives weight to the present by threatening its disappearance. Eternity haunts the present by suggesting it might not disappear at all. Between these poles we live, suspended in a now that is both fleeting and infinite, fragile and eternal. To accept one without the other is to miss the mystery. To hold them together is to stand in awe. And so, the vanishing of now is not simply loss. It is the condition that opens the door to meaning, to love, to urgency, to awe. Death is not the negation of time, but its completion, the boundary that shapes the contours of every present. Eternity is not the escape from death, but the shadow it casts, the intuition that beneath the vanishing lies something that endures. Whether that endurance is cosmic inscription, collective memory, or transcendent consciousness, it keeps the now from collapsing into nothingness. We end this reflection where we began, with the inescapable present. No matter how far we imagine, into future lives, into cosmic eternities, into the silence of death, we return always to the now, luminous and fragile. Death may close the door, eternity may open it, but the threshold is always here, in this breath, this moment, this fleeting, yet infinite present. The prison of now is not merely a confinement, it is also a revelation. For within its walls we encounter death, eternity, and the vanishing that gives life its meaning. And in that confrontation, we discover not despair, but wonder, the wonder that even in the face of nothingness, the now burns with a light that feels eternal. To stand in the present is to stand on shifting ground. The everyday now feels familiar, a steady rhythm of experience unfolding second by second. But when we descend into the foundations of physics, the certainty of this rhythm begins to collapse. What we call the present is not a smooth surface but a fractured terrain, shaped by relativity, dissolved by quantum mechanics, and fractured into scales so fine that human intuition can no longer follow. To explore the edge of now is to walk to the horizon of science, where every answer reveals a deeper question and where the present moment dissolves into paradox. Albert Einstein's theory of relativity was among the first to undermine the common sense idea of a universal now. In everyday life, we assume that events happening in this moment are simultaneous for everyone, everywhere. But relativity teaches us that simultaneity is not absolute. Two observers, moving at different speeds, can disagree about whether two events happen at the same time. The present is not a universal slice of reality. It is a perspective, defined by motion and position. At cosmic scales, there is no single now to unite the universe. Instead, there are countless nows, stitched together by relativity into a fabric where time and space are inseparable. The idea of a shared present collapses, replaced by a landscape where each observer carries their own horizon of now. This realization unsettles our ordinary sense of time. If there is no universal present, then what does it mean to say we live in the now? Physics suggests that the present is less like a single moment and more like a local condition, a small patch of space-time that looks different depending on where you stand and how you move. In this view, the present becomes relative, not absolute. It is not a container in which reality unfolds, but a perspective projected by our motion through space-time. And yet relativity is only the beginning of the unraveling. When we step into the quantum world, the mystery of now deepens further. At the level of atoms and particles, events do not unfold in the smooth rhythm we associate with time. Instead, they are described by probabilities, by clouds of possibility, that collapse into actual outcomes only when measured. This collapse, the quantum measurement problem, has haunted physics for more than a century. What does it mean to say a particle exists in many states until observed? Does the act of measurement create the present, or does it merely reveal one among many hidden realities? Some interpretations suggest that consciousness plays a role in collapsing quantum possibilities into definite outcomes, pulling the fuzzy future into the sharpness of now. Others argue that the universe splits, with every possibility realized, in branching worlds, leaving no single present at all. In either case, the now is not stable. It is emergent, provisional, dependent on the mysterious interplay of observation and reality. The present moment may be less a stage on which events occur than a fragile negotiation between uncertainty and certainty. At even finer scales, the very structure of time begins to dissolve. Physicists speak of the Planck time, the smallest meaningful unit of duration, roughly 10^43 seconds. Beyond this, our equations break down. Time cannot be divided into anything smaller, at least not in any way physics can describe. The smooth continuity of the present disintegrates, replaced by an unimaginably fine grain. What we call now may not be continuous at all, but pixelated, built from quanta of duration that flicker too quickly for us to perceive. If this is true, then the flow of now is an illusion created by consciousness, stitching together discrete frames into the appearance of continuity, much like a film strip projected on a screen. But even these edges are not fixed. When we approach the singularities of black holes, or the first moments after the Big Bang, the very fabric of space-time bends and twists. Inside a black hole, the roles of space and time exchange. The singularity at its center may represent a point where time itself ends, or perhaps where it is rewritten in forms beyond comprehension. The event horizon marks not only a boundary of light, but a boundary of now. For an observer falling in, the present stretches and distorts, collapsing into a fate that cannot be avoided. For an outside observer, the same event appears frozen, as though time has stopped. Which is the true now? Both, and neither. At the edge of physics, the present is not a stable concept, but a riddle that shifts with perspective. Quantum gravity, our yet unfinished attempt to unite relativity and quantum mechanics, pushes the paradox further. Some approaches suggest that time is not fundamental at all but emergent, a byproduct of deeper, timeless structures. If this is true, then the present is not a basic ingredient of the universe, but a secondary phenomenon, like temperature or pressure, arising only when countless underlying processes are viewed together. The prison of now would then be a construct, not a foundation, an emergent reality built atop a timeless core. The present would not be the bedrock of existence, but a mirage appearing at the scale of conscious beings. And yet, even as physics erodes the solidity of now, it cannot erase the undeniable fact that we live in it. The paradox is sharp. Physics suggests that the present is relative, emergent, or illusory, but experience insists that it is absolute, inescapable, and concrete. We cannot live in the block universe, seeing all times at once. We cannot inhabit quantum probabilities, drifting endlessly among superpositions. We inhabit now, and so the edge of physics does not dissolve the present. It makes it stranger, more mysterious, more charged with questions than ever before. This tension echoes through the history of science. Every advance in physics has pushed the boundary of the present outward, challenging common sense, but never fully displacing it. Galileo's telescopes expanded the scale of now from the earth to the heavens. Newton's mechanics imposed a universal time, as though the universe ticked in synchrony. Einstein shattered that universality, scattering now into countless frames of reference. Quantum theory fragmented it further, replacing certainty with probability. Today, quantum gravity whispers that time itself may not exist at the deepest level. Each revolution redraws the map of now, but the territory remains elusive. Perhaps this is why the physics of the present often feels so unsettling. To accept relativity is to abandon the dream of a single universal now. To accept quantum theory is to accept that the present is stitched together from uncertainty. To accept the Planck scale is to accept that continuity itself may be an illusion. Each step undermines the solidity of now, yet none erase its presence in our lives. The paradox remains. The present is both indispensable and indefinable, the most real and the most elusive thing we know. At the edge of physics, then, the present becomes less a question of measurement and more a question of meaning. What does it mean to live in a universe where the now is relative, probabilistic, or emergent? What does it mean to love, to hope, to die in a world where time itself may be an illusion? Science can describe the edges, but it cannot close the circle. The human heart insists on the reality of the now even as equations dissolve it, and so we stand at the threshold of mystery. Physics carries us to the edge of now, but beyond that edge lies speculation, philosophy, and wonder. If time is emergent. What is it that emerges from? If the present is relative, why does it feel absolute? If reality is timeless, why does consciousness create the illusion of flow? These questions are not errors in our understanding. They are the natural consequence of approaching the horizon of knowledge. At the edge of physics, the present does not disappear. It transforms into a doorway, opening onto possibilities we can only begin to imagine. This is where the story turns. From the physics of now, we move into its horizons, into the speculative, the philosophical, the perhaps unanswerable. For while science sketches the boundaries, it is wonder that fills the space beyond. The prison of now is built not only of equations and measurements, but of mysteries that stretch into eternity. To explore those horizons is to venture beyond the edge of physics into the limitless terrain of imagination and meaning. And it is to that horizon we now turn. When physics reaches its limits, imagination begins to stir. At the edges of equations, where certainty dissolves into silence, the horizons of the now open onto vast speculative landscapes. These are the places where science shades into philosophy, where reason stretches into myth, and where the human mind dares to wonder. What if the present moment is not what it seems at all? To gaze into these horizons is not to abandon rigor, but to recognize that the greatest questions demand courage to step beyond what is proven. The prison of now may not be a cage at all, but a doorway. One horizon emerges from the idea of simulation. If our universe is not the bedrock of reality, but a computational construct, then the now we inhabit may be the result of discrete updates in a cosmic processor. Just as a video game renders only the scene in front of the player, reality may render only the present moment, leaving past and future as stored data or potential code. The flow of now would then be an artifact of processing, a rhythm imposed by the architecture of the simulation. In this view, the present is not the essence of reality, but the illusion of an algorithm, an update rate disguised as time. Yet even in this speculative vision, wonder persists. If the universe is a simulation, what kind of consciousness wrote its code? And why did it shape experience around the now? Perhaps the very structure of the present is evidence not of limitation, but of intention, a clue that meaning lies woven into the fabric of perception. The prison of now would then be more like a carefully designed stage, guiding us through reality in a sequence that allows experience, growth, and story. Another horizon lies in the multiverse. If countless universes exist, each with its own timeline, then the now of our universe is but one of an infinite array. Some theories suggest these universes may even overlap or interact, producing echoes, déjà vu, or anomalies that hint at alternate presents brushing against our own. In such a cosmos, the now is not singular but manifold, a chorus of realities unfolding in parallel. The prison of now becomes a single cell in an infinite cathedral of moments, each resonating with countless others beyond our reach. But the multiverse raises deeper questions. If there are infinite nows, then why are we bound to this one? What principle ties consciousness to a particular present rather than scattering it across possibilities? The answer may lie not in physics, but in perspective, that the now is not chosen, but experienced, that individuality itself is the act of inhabiting a single thread of the infinite tapestry. The prison of now becomes the definition of identity. To be someone rather than everything is to live in one now rather than all. Higher dimensions offer yet another horizon. Our present feels inescapable because we perceive time only as a line, one moment replacing the next. But what if time is not linear, but spatial? A dimension to be navigated like length, width, and height. From a higher dimensional vantage, all moments might coexist, just as all points on a line exist at once. Our consciousness, moving slice by slice, would perceive this dimension as the flow of now. The prison of now would then be a perceptual limitation, a blindness to the larger whole. Were we able to step into higher dimensions, we might see past, present, and future not as fleeting, but as enduring, laid out like a vast landscape across which we travel. This vision echoes mystical traditions that speak of timelessness as a higher plane accessible through altered states of consciousness or spiritual practice. The scientific and the spiritual converge here, both pointing toward horizons where the now is not a fleeting instant, but an infinite expanse. Perhaps what we call the present is only a shadow of a more profound reality, a sliver of eternity, perceived through the narrow aperture of human awareness. Then there is the horizon of cosmic consciousness, the idea that the universe itself is aware, and that our individual nows are fragments of a greater mind. In this vision, the present moment is not merely subjective, but collective, woven from countless streams of awareness into a cosmic now. Our experience of the present would then be like a droplet in an ocean, distinct yet inseparable from the whole. Death would not erase the now, but return it to the larger field. Time itself would not flow, but breathe, expanding and contracting in cycles of awareness that transcend human perception. Such horizons can feel intoxicating, even overwhelming. They blur the line between science and story, evidence and imagination. Skeptics will argue that these possibilities are castles built on air, distractions from the hard work of empirical inquiry. And yet even the skeptics must admit that the greatest scientific revolutions often began as speculation, as questions too daring for the data of their day. To ask whether the now is simulated, multiplied, dimensional, or conscious is not to abandon science, but to honor its spirit, the spirit of wonder, of curiosity, of restless pursuit. What unites all these horizons is their challenge to the assumption that the present is simple. Whether seen as code, as one thread among infinite, as a shadow of higher dimensions, or as the pulse of a cosmic mind, the now becomes something far stranger than the ordinary instant we take for granted. The prison of now may not be confinement, but invitation. An invitation to imagine, to question, to explore beyond the walls of the familiar. And perhaps this is the deepest meaning of speculative horizons. They remind us that the present is not exhausted by explanation, that even after relativity and quantum mechanics and Planck time, there remains a mystery at the heart of now. That mystery is not a failure of knowledge, but a source of wonder, a reminder that existence is richer than our current understanding. To live in the now is to live in the center of a question that may never be fully answered. As we leave these horizons behind, we return to where we began, the inescapable now. But we return changed, our perspective widened, our sense of the present deepened by the possibilities that shimmer at its edges. For even if the now is fleeting, even if it is fragile, even if it is a prison, it is also the doorway through which all mystery enters. To step into the present is to stand on the edge of infinity, to look out across horizons that stretch beyond science, beyond philosophy, beyond imagination itself. And so, with horizons explored, we turn to the closing reflection. What is the meaning of all this? What does it matter that the present is paradox, illusion, possibility, and wonder? To answer, we must bring science and philosophy back into dialogue with the human heart. For the true significance of the now lies not only in physics or speculation, but in how it shapes the way we live, love, and find meaning. That is the task of our final chapter. At the end of this long journey, through physics and paradox, through speculation and wonder, we arrive back where we began, the present moment, the now, the only place we have ever truly lived. We have explored its mysteries, its prisons, its horizons, and yet we still find ourselves here, seated in the middle of it, as though no distance had been travelled at all. That is the paradox of the now. No matter how far thought journeys, no matter how many universes we imagine, no matter how high we climb through dimensions of possibility, we always return here, to the silence of the moment unfolding, and perhaps that is the greatest lesson. The meaning of now is not hidden in equations or buried in metaphysical speculation alone. It is revealed in the simple, undeniable fact that every experience, every joy, every sorrow, every memory, and Every dream is shaped and filtered through the present. You cannot hold love yesterday, and you cannot touch love tomorrow. You can only feel its warmth in the immediacy of now. You cannot grieve a loss in the abstract of time. You grieve in the breath you are taking this instant. You cannot wonder about the stars except in the act of looking upward, right now, as your eyes widen in awe. The present is not merely where we exist, it is how we exist. Yet this truth does not dissolve the paradox. If the now is all we have, why does it slip away so easily? Why does the present feel less like a home and more like a river, always flowing, never still? Perhaps the answer lies not in trying to trap the now, to freeze it, to demand it stay, but in learning to dwell within its movement. The river is not a prison if you understand it as a path. The now is not diminished by its impermanence. It is given meaning by it. For what would love be if it could be hoarded? What would beauty be if it were eternal? It is because the now flows that it shines. Philosophers across centuries have circled this truth. The Stoics urged us to return to the present, to live in accordance with what is, rather than to be consumed by what was or what might be. Eastern traditions have long spoken of mindfulness, of inhabiting the now not as an accident, but as a practice, a discipline of awareness. Even modern psychology has begun to measure what sages intuited. That well-being is not found in the constant chasing of futures or the replaying of pasts, but in the depth with which one can inhabit the unfolding instant. The science of happiness converges with the wisdom of ages on this point. The present is not only all we have, it is enough. But there is a tension we must acknowledge. To live fully in the now does not mean abandoning past or future, for they shape us as surely as breath. Memory gives identity, anticipation gives direction. Without them, the present would dissolve into chaos, an unmoored succession of sensations. The meaning of now, then, is not to exclude past and future, but to integrate them, to allow memory and anticipation to enrich the present rather than replace it. To remember is not to live in the past, but to bring the lessons of the past into the vividness of now. To anticipate is not to flee into the future, but to let the future guide how we shape the present. Thus, the art of life is not to escape the paradox, but to balance it. To live in the flow of now while honoring the threads that connect it backward and forward. Mortality sharpens this lesson. Each human life is a finite number of present moments, no more, no less. When we reach the end, it is not the length of years we recall, but the intensity of moments. A first kiss, the laughter of a friend, the quiet of dawn, the sight of stars reflected in water. The now is fragile, but in that fragility lies its sacredness. To waste the present is to waste life itself. To honor it is to honor existence. The meaning of now is inseparable from the meaning of being mortal. For only by recognizing that time is limited do we feel the urgency to live. And yet, the now is not only personal, it is also collective. Entire civilizations move through shared presents, moments that define generations, the discovery of fire, the first step on the moon, the silence after great tragedies, the roar of voices demanding change. These are not merely dates in history, they are lived nows, carried within the memory of humanity. When we live in the present, we are not only individuals navigating fleeting seconds, we are participants in a larger unfolding, threads in a collective tapestry of moments. To recognize this is to see that the now is not just a point in time, it is a bridge between self and world. Art, too, reveals the power of now. A painting does not exist in the past of its creation or the future of its preservation. It exists in the moment of encounter, when eyes meet color and form. Music is perhaps the most perfect metaphor. It cannot be held, cannot be stored, cannot be frozen without losing its essence. It only exists as it is heard, unfolding in time, dissolving even as it appears. To listen is to practice presence. To create is to pour intention into the now, shaping it into something that outlives itself. Perhaps that is why we create art, not to escape time, but to bless it, to give permanence to what is fleeting by capturing its essence. Even science, which measures and dissects time, ultimately returns us to the now. Relativity teaches that simultaneity is relative, that the present is not absolute, but perspectival. Quantum physics whispers that reality is not fixed until it is observed, that the act of presence may shape the unfolding of events. Neuroscience shows that the brain is a time binder, constantly stitching perception into the illusion of a continuous now. Everywhere we look, we find the same truth. The now is not simple. It is the most intricate, mysterious, essential phenomenon we encounter. It is where physics meets consciousness, where reality meets meaning. And so, after traveling through paradoxes, through limits, through horizons, we discover that the meaning of now cannot be reduced to theory or dissolved into speculation. The meaning of now is lived. It is not only the subject of inquiry, but the practice of existence. To live is to step into this moment with awareness, with courage, with openness. To love is to offer the present to another. To hope is to shape the present with possibility. To die is to release the present into silence. Every philosophy, every science, every art converges on this truth. The now is not only where we are, it is what we are. As you listen to these words, you are already within that meaning. Your breath is moving, your heart is beating, your mind is drifting across thoughts and images that exist only now. The universe does not wait. It unfolds with or without our attention. But when we give it our attention, when we step fully into the present, we find that the prison of now transforms. It is no longer walls closing in, but a threshold opening out. The now becomes not confinement, but infinity. Not limitation, but gift. And so we close, not with an answer, but with an invitation. Wherever you are, lying in bed, walking beneath stars, listening in stillness, pause for a moment. Notice the breath that fills your lungs, the weight of your body on the earth, the sound of silence, or the murmur of life around you. This is the now. It has always been here, and it will always be here, flowing, fleeting, eternal in its impermanence. You are living it. You are it. The meaning of now is not to be explained but to be embraced, and perhaps that is the most beautiful mystery of all.